Well, we get asked all the time, how much do I need to retire? So today we're going to try to tackle that question here in just a few minutes, give some broad examples, kind of some broad checkpoints, if you will, talk about maybe where you should be at certain phases in your life, but also why that maybe isn't what you should be relying on and how important it is to tackle a detailed financial plan here. So let's jump right into this first little piece here we found from Fidelity. Will, talk us through kind of what this is saying here.
Right, so this is kind of just a broad-based example of where you should be throughout the different stages in your life. This is saying, by age 30, you should have 1 times your current salary saved in investment accounts, growing, earning interest, ready to be deployed at retirement for when you get there. So for example, if I'm making $75,000 a year, by the time I'm 30, I should have at least that amount in my various retirement accounts at that time.
So, Will, let's take a look at this. It says at age 67, I need 10 times my salary. So if I make $100,000, it's saying I need $1 million at age 67. But we rarely get anyone who comes in here and says, I want to retire at 67. It happens, but much more commonly, we get folks talking about age 55 to age 60. So what would I need at those ages? Do I need the 7 or 8 times? How would that number, if I want to
Right,
retire?
and this is why you really cannot rely on broad-based, one-to-many type rules of thumb for your own personal finances, because especially if you're going to retire early, like you mentioned at age 55 or 60, that 8 times your salary rule is just not going to work for you. In reality, you'll need even more than 10 times your salary because you have, those 7 years to make up while you're going on vacations, living the life you want, and you're using that money for a longer period of time while still needing it to support your lifestyle. So a lot of these one-to-many type broad-based ads that tell you how much you need to have saved by what age, it doesn't really work for your own personal situation a lot of the times.
Yep. Let's take a look at this second kind of checkpoint, if you will, retirement savings calculator. So this one is by JP Morgan. They have a fantastic guide to retirement piece that you'll probably see us use a lot more moving forward. But this one shows a little bit more complicated. If you want to pause the video here and take a look at your specific example, we would recommend that. But let's just go to the far left column, keep it easy numbers, and go to $100,000. If you make $100,000 and you are 30 years old, their checkpoint is to say you should have about 60% of your salary saved. So if you're 30 and you make 100 grand, they're recommending you be at about $60,000 saved at this point. If you make $100,000 and you're 50, though, they're recommending you be at 5 times that. So you'd be at about 500 grand. So I think this one, is a little bit more broad scoping, a little bit more detailed for people to look at. Well, what do you think on this one compared to the one we saw before that?
So as you can see, right, these numbers are even very, very different from the slide we saw earlier. At 30, Fidelity was saying you're going to need 1 time your current salary. JP Morgan says, well, wait a minute, you're only going to need 60% of that, right? So even among the professionals, you are looking at very, very different viewpoints of even what, they think in and of themselves. This one's a little bit more interesting to me because we see the assumptions they're using on that right side over there. And what sticks out to me about those assumptions really are the pre-retirement portfolios. The asset allocation mixes seem a little bit off to me. And this just points again to, you needing to know your own situation, you needing to know what your specific asset allocation is, what your specific asset allocation needs to be based on your savings rate, based on your goals, and based on your specific situation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sorry, go ahead.
Now, I don't think that this is incorrect. Obviously, these are good rules of thumb, and they do have experts doing the research, and it's definitely not bad to hit these benchmarks along the way. You're never going to be in a bad position if you follow this. All I'm saying is, you might be able to live a bit more lavishly currently than you might think. if you sit down and really analyze your specific situation and realize your needs and your goals.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more because, when I look at that $100,000 column, and I go out to age 60 and I see 8 times, that's $800,000. Now, I know that I've met with people with a household income of 100,000 that didn't have 800,000 and they were able to retire comfortably. And I know folks who made $100,000 household and had well more than 800,000 and weren't able to retire, right? Because the details of how each of those households wanted to spend their money and what their specific goals were so different from one another that they required different amounts of money. So yeah, I love your point on the detailed, your personalized, detailed financial plan. These are really good checkpoints, right? Kind of broad scoping ideas, but definitely nothing that you should be relying on for longer than just a quick check-in. Let's take a look at an example. Well, we have one more slide. This slide we both really like. So this is one that shows income replacement needs. And you can see on the bottom axis here, we have different salaries, household incomes. And in the top, there's that purple line that says how much of your income you need to have replaced. So we've been talking about $100,000. Let's stay there. So if you go to the $100,000 column and go up to the top, it says you need 86% of that to be replaced. What they're suggesting is 14% of your income, so $14,000, was going to taxes and pre-retirement savings and things like that you will no longer need in retirement. So you only need to live off of $86,000 if you were making 100. Now, of that, 44% of that was going to come from Social Security, right? So if you're a household, two individuals, one is going to make 22,000 in Social Security, the other one's going to make 22,000 in Social Security, totals $44,000 or 44%. And that leaves the last bucket, 42% of the $42,000, if you're making 100 grand, needs to come from some other retirement income source. So again, this would be a good spot to pause the video and kind of take a look at where your specific income is and what your target should be. But we built a quick example to kind of show that. So if your current, or you can calculate this based on your own income pretty easily as well. So if your current household income, 100,000, income replacement 86% or 86,000, 44,000 coming from Social Security, 46,000 coming from some other retirement income source. Now, assuming you don't have a pension or anything like that, this is going to be the savings that you were able to accumulate in your life. So needing to replace, I'm looking at this middle 46,000 divided by a 4% withdrawal rate. So what that means is if you have this big lump sum of money, how much of that can I withdraw over time? And that number would be 1.15 million. Okay, so 1,150,000. If you had that, you could safely withdraw 4% off of that and replace that $46,000. Now, we also showed an example for a 5% withdrawal rate, which you would only need $920,000. So 4% withdrawal rate, 5% withdrawal rate. Will walk us through when we could lean on a 4% withdrawal rate versus a 5% withdrawal rate.
Yeah. And again, these 4%, the 4% withdrawal rate is a general rule of thumb. Some of these that we have been talking about previously that may not apply to your situation, but for purpose of estimates and estimating what you're going to need, it's a pretty good assumption. So we would use a 4% withdrawal rate for someone who's retiring around age 60. Generally, that 4% withdrawal rate is attached to a 30-year retirement. So if you may not have the longest family longevity history or are retiring around 65, 67, a little bit later, we might be able to bump that up to the 5% withdrawal rate because we're not having to make that money stretch as long as maybe somebody that retires a little bit early. So if you're retiring, even earlier than 60, we may have to even reduce that withdrawal rate. It just depends on, again, your unique situation and your unique income needs. But this is, pretty good rule of thumb to go by. And if you're someone who needs to replace, $86,000 of income in retirement, and in this situation like this, then you're going to be looking at around $1 million to $1.2 million that you're going to have in retirement accounts by the time you're ready to pull that trigger and retire. So That's kind of how we go about determining what withdrawal rate is appropriate for you. This is a good estimate, and I would, continue planning around this if you're a ways away from retirement. So.
Yeah, great stuff. So, that we'll wrap up with that. The question of, how much do I need to retire? We gave you 3 decent little pieces to do some checkpoints on where you're at. But there's absolutely no substitute for, sitting down and putting together a detailed financial plan, analyzing your specific situation, your specific needs and goals, your family history, your social security benefit, all things combined. That's what we do. If we can help you do that, give us a call. Will, thank you for your time. Appreciate everybody watching. We hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to y'all soon.